All right, good morning, everyone. I'm Joaquin Esquivel, Chair of the State Water Resources Control Board. Today is Tuesday, October 1st. It is 9 a.m., and I'd like to call this meeting to order. I'll begin by introducing my fellow board colleagues. Joining us shortly will be Vice Chair Doreen Diadamo. We're also joined by Board Member Sean McGuire, Board Member Laurel Firestone, and also joined by our executive staff, Eric Oppenheimer, our Executive Director, Karen Mogus and Jonathan Bishop, our two chief deputies. Joining us from the Office of Chief Counsel is Andy Sawyer. Our clerk of the board is Courtney Tyler, and assisting her today is Margie Argel, Elizabeth Carrillo, and Susan Reyes. As you can see, this is a hybrid meeting with both in-person and virtual components. If you're joining us virtually, you're either viewing us through the customary webcast on the Cali PA website or YouTube Live. But if you intend on commenting on any of the items today, you need to be on the Zoom platform. There's a link and instructions at the top of the agenda on how to be able to get onto the platform. But if you're having any challenges, please do just email the clerk of the board at board.clerk@waterboards.ca.gov, and she can help get you on the platform. Once you are on the platform, your camera will be off. You will be on mute until it's your turn to speak on the item you've indicated. For everyone in the room, good morning. Good to see you all. We're here in Sacramento in the California Environmental Protection Agency building. A few announcements for us here as well. Please do observe the exits. If we happen to have an emergency, we'll calmly file out to Cesar Chavez Plaza and await further direction. Additionally, if you intend on commenting of any today's items, there is a laptop on the side of the room and a QR code in order to sign up. If you're having any challenges, please do speak to the clerk of the board. And when you come up to the mic, please introduce yourself and any affiliation that you're part of. And lastly, please do silence any phones just so that we have an uninterrupted discussion this morning. Good to see you all. And with that, we can now move straight into public forum. We have about 6 public forum commenters this morning. And the first commenter I'd like to call up is Chris Milan, be followed by John Coogan, and then Derek Urosic.
Okay, can you hear me, board? My name's Chris.
We can. Good morning.
Good morning, Chris Malin, the Executive Director of the Institute for Conservation Advocacy, Research and Education. And I've provided a link to your board secretary or assistant, and she's going to play it. This is the Napa River at the Pope Street Bridge area in St. Helena, California. And you can see the Napa River is bone dry. The riverbed is cracked, and there's not a sign of moisture here. Yet this, at one time, was a free-flowing river that had salmon of both coho, chinook, and steelhead. The numbers have dropped so dramatically that the salmon are listed on the Endangered Species Act. And one of the main reasons is they don't have any water to live in. There's just very few places left in the Napa River watershed for salmon and steelhead to live. This dewatering is happening because there's too many groundwater pumps supplying vineyards, and there's a groundwater pump that is used to supply the city of St. Helena, very near the river here. You can hear my feet crunching on the riverbed. The crunching is from the algae, the dead algae that formed as the water became warm and diminished from the groundwater pumping and the surface water diversions. So algae forms, and sometimes it can become toxic to animals and humans. But all this patchy white is dead algae from when the river flows dropped, the river got warm, and the algae started to bloom heavily from all the nutrients again from the vineyards. They use a lot of artificial fertilizers, and during the rainstorms, the fertilizers wash into
All right,
the
good
river
morning, everyone.
and
I'm
start
Joaquin
feeding the
Esquivel, Chair of the
natural
State Water
occurring
Resources Control
algae.
Board. Today is
So
Tuesday,
when the water
October
gets
1st. It is
warm
9 a.m. and I'd like to
and
call
the
this meeting to
flows
order.
diminish,
I'll
that
begin
sets
by
up the right
introducing my fellow board colleagues. Joining us shortly will be
environment
Vice Chair Doreen
for
Diadamo.
the
We're also
algae
joined
to
by
take
Board
over.
Member
And as you
Sean
can see,
McGuire, Board Member
it
Laurel
covered the
Firestone,
surface of the
and
water
also
before
joined
the
by our
water was
executive
all
staff,
gone.
Eric Oppenheimer, our Executive Director,
So
Karen
much has
Mogus,
to be done
and
to
Jonathan
restore the
Bishop,
Napa
our
River.
two Chief Deputies. Joining us
Many
from the
say they
Office
are
of Chief Counsel
restoring
is Andy
it, and they're
Sawyer.
spending
Our
millions
Clerk
of
of the Board is
dollars
Courtney Tyler, and
planting
assisting her today is
native.
Margie Argel, Elizabeth Carrillo, and Susan. Okay, thank you. Sorry, Miss Malin. I think what started happening was there was a webcast that was going on along with your video, so
Oh,
we only got about
okay.
halfway through it.
All right. I didn't know what happened there. I was trying to figure it out if it was on my end. So, okay.
One moment, looking to the clerk to see if we think we'd be able to finish the video or if, okay, thank you. One moment, Miss Malin.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Plants and restoring degraded riverbanks. But if you don't have water, all the restoration in the world doesn't bring back the animals. And if you see up here, as I walk towards this rock outcrop, that would have been a place for steelhead and salmon and all manner of other aquatic animals like yellow-legged frog, California freshwater shrimp. In those undercut banks over there on the bank, that's where the shrimp like to hang out. But as you can see, there's no water. They would have held up in this deep pool as long as they could. But as the water diminished, they were subject to predation and all the critters in the river died. So Napa County has way over appropriated water, surface water and groundwater. Surface water has been over appropriated. They gave out too many permits and there wasn't enough water to cover the permits. So this is what you get when you destroy a natural resource. The Napa River belongs to all of us, belongs to the people, the animals. And there's been a lot of greed over water, and nobody's paying attention to the fact that the river has gone completely dry here, killing all living aquatic animals. Action needs to be taken. Chris Malin, the Institute for Conservation, Advocacy, Research, and Education. Lift up your voices and don't let this happen to your rivers and streams. Keep our rivers and streams alive, flowing, so that future generations can have clean flowing water. It takes everybody to keep this from happening. September 15th, 2024.
So I was not planning to take that video. I went there to photograph 2 dead beavers that the community is in uproar about. Somebody found 2 dead beavers at their beaver dam, and we don't know why. But when I got down there, I thought, well, it could be because they didn't have any water, but I never did find them. Thank you so much for listening and watching this morning.
Thank you for your time, Ms. Malin. Appreciate you addressing the board here, raising your concerns. And I know that here at Public Forum, we don't necessarily have a comment or response right away, but do know that the Napa River and so many of the streams within and rivers within the state of California are being looked at. So I appreciate your advocacy here. Thank you, Ms. Malin. Next, I'd like to call up John Coogan, be followed by Derek Urosic and then Jarrett Martin.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
We can, good morning.
Okay, I'm going to share a PowerPoint presentation, I hope, and should be 5 minutes long.
Sorry, Mr. Coogan. We don't allow folks to share screen. You would have needed to have sent it over to our clerk beforehand to be able to share. But if you can maybe speak through some of what you would like to have presented, that can satisfy for this morning.
Okay, you'll just have to trust that the pictures that demonstrate what I'm talking about exist and are available for review.
And if you would like, if you can email the clerk of the board the photos or the material that you'd like to have shared with the board, she can do so here afterwards. And that's at board.clerk@waterboards.ca.gov.
Yes, I have her email. Okay, thank you. My name is John Coogan, and I represent Trinity County's Rowdy Bear Preservation, which is a group of 3 landowners that abut a California grow, which is CCL 106. And this is in regards to an EPA process that we began, complaint 57634. And after a couple of years of gathering evidence and conversations back and forth, in March of 2024, Kate Hawken, who's the water resource control engineer for the No Coast Regional Water Control Board, determined that the Regional Water Board did not find evidence of significant water quality issues on the subject property. While we acknowledge the presence of cultivation-related materials and waste, property is situated upland away from streams and materials and do not appear to be impacting water quality. We contend that the violations are not dependent on immediate impact and compliance is unto the regulations themselves, and violations do affect neighboring roads, land, water usage, seasonal, ephemeral streams into the Philpott and South Fork watersheds, and a shared aquifer. Assessment was made with no site visit. Assessment was made with no review of paperwork. And the lack of this review has opened the neighbors and land association legal retaliation for, quote, filing a false report. So we are asking the central office to give us an advocate to help us have the paperwork reviewed and ideally a site visit. I understand resources are short and things have to be prioritized, but we would like a look at the water hauling, road building, waste disposal, and erosion control. Vis-a-vis the water hauling, section 2, number 94, cultivators have to retain for 5 years documentation, and they could not have documentation because we are situated inside national forests, federal land. They don't issue commercial permits for hauling for the marijuana industry. There is also an unidentified aquifer that was first drilled for a domestic well, used for agriculture, run dry, and now a second well has been added. So we would like a site visit to look at that along with the bladder and fuel oil containment. And we contend that the infusion of this much water into our environment is having a negative adverse effect, as for instance, the increase in insect populations like these swarms of grasshoppers and mites and other related insects to agricultural. We'd also like road building to look at. This is section 1, number 4, number 6, number 8, number 15, 18, 21, 22, 26. I have numerous photos that this was not designed or executed by qualified professionals, as said in section 2, number 4. Permits were not granted to widen and deepen Forest Service roads or an easement through my property. That's section 1, number 18. There's no known report from a qualified biologist identifying sensitive plant, wildlife, or communities. Section 1, number 10. We would like a site visit to determine that the roads are not compliant with California Code Regulation Title 14, Chapter 4. Roads that are subject to rainy and winter travel are not paid, and trespass happened when slash and other debris were pushed onto neighboring lands with these improper roads. We'd also like waste disposal to be reviewed. There's numerous parts of Section 1. Cal Fire has already cited them for irreparable logging. The grower claims trash was not buried and burned, despite our pictures of it being buried and burned. And we would ask for the paperwork again to be checked that there are receipts for proper disposal at a California cannabis operation. We think ideally there should be soil testing. And to this day, cannabis waste is left exposed to the elements where it runs off. We are on top of a mountain, so it all goes down. And also waste is used as fill with all the pesticides, amendments, and other parts of that industry. We'd also like you to look at erosion control. Fish and Game itself has ordered last summer erosion control, which has not yet happened. We also had a third party, Matsubi Construction, which look at this, and they declared it does not meet industry standard. Toe of pad lacks mechanical compact, no silt fencing, straw wattle, or other conventional erosion control. This creates irrigation runoff, tailwater sediment, plant waste, and chemicals on surface water via surface runoff and may be going into the aquifer. It also comes down across our roads, erodes them, and enters ephemeral streams. So this, again, goes to trespass and impact. Unpermitted work. This was not done by qualified professionals, and the slopes were not stabilized to prevent sediment discharge to surface waters. I have many photos of this. We respectfully request Rowdy Bear preservationists a review of the Northwest Water Board decision to review relevant paperwork, site inspection, enforcement, and mitigation, and generally would like a reconsideration of approval by the Water Board for CCL 106, given the environmental location, impacted community, roads, aquifer, and a history of noncompliance that should not be rewarded with a license. Thank you for your time.
Thank you as well, Mr. Coogan. I'm looking over to our Chief Deputy Karen Mogus, and perhaps Ms. Mogus, you can follow up with Mr. Coogan and his concerns. I know it may be an enforcement issue, so maybe a referral to folks there. But
yeah, certainly, I'll contact Mr. Coogan and our Office of Enforcement and figure out what's going on.
Thank you. Really appreciate that, Ms. Mogus, and thank you, Mr. Coogan. Appreciate you elevating this to the board this morning.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you as well. Next, I'd like to call up, let me make sure I'm looking at my list here. Derek Urasic, be followed by Jared Martin, and then Ricardo Ortega.
Great. Good morning, Chair Escobar and members of the board. This is Derek Urasic, and I serve as the chair of the Kern County Subbasin Coordination Committee, representing all GSAs within the Kern County Subbasin. On behalf of the Kern County Subbasin, I express our deep appreciation for the time and effort invested by board members and staff in visiting Kern County in person over the last month to learn more about our groundwater basin and understand the improvements made with our new 2024 GSP. Your engagement reflects the board's recognition of the vital role that local agencies play in understanding and managing the complexities of their basins. We believe an in-person engagement is invaluable for fostering a shared understanding of the Kern subbasin's diverse groundwater users, unique hydrologic conditions, and the scientific data and methodologies underpinning the new 2024 GSPs. As we work through an iterative process with State Board staff to align our new 2024 GSPs with the board's expectations, we welcome future opportunities to host board members and staff for additional in-person visits and meetings, particularly as we address specific technical components of our GSPs, such as a representative monitoring network, subsidence, and water banking. As a subbasin, we have committed additional funds to support the travel of our technical experts to Sacramento to ensure consistent and effective communication on technical issues with State Board staff. Looking forward, we respectfully request that the board allocate the necessary resources to enable routine in-person engagement between its staff and our technical working group, as we believe such collaboration is crucial to advancing a shared path towards groundwater sustainability in Kern County. We also remind the public that Kern County Subbasin's revised 2024 GSP is now open for public comment, and we encourage stakeholders to review and provide input. A copy of the GSP and instructions for submitting comments are available at kerngsp.com. Thank you for the opportunity to provide comments today.
Thank you for your time and those comments, Mr. Yarosek. I look forward to further discussion and I know coordination that's ongoing, so thank you. Next, I'd like to call up Jared Martin, be followed by Ricardo Ortega, and then I believe our last commenter here is Supervisor Scott Silveria. Oh, apologies. I think the mic is cold. There's a button at the base of it. You just need to turn it on. Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
There we
Martin.
go. Chair, board members, appreciate it. My name is Jarrett Martin. I am the General Manager of Central California Irrigation District and the designated Sigma representative for 6 disadvantaged communities, 3 of them being severely disadvantaged in the Delta Mendota subbasin. That's what I'm here to talk about. Our subbasin is about 750,000 acres. We have 23 GSAs. We're in 6 counties. We have 9 adjacent subbasins. We're 100 miles long. Our subbasin is on marine deposits, which means our groundwater is fairly saline. So saline that the community of Dos Palace, one of those severely disadvantaged communities, has been reliant on surface water since at least the 1930s. So our water quality is a challenge. If all that wasn't challenging enough and unique enough, we thought that, well, we're going to develop 6 GSPs to make this thing work. That was not successful, as you guys are aware. And we are simplifying that down into a single GSP. Particularly in that, some things that we're looking very carefully at for the sustainable management criteria is a collaborative partnership with the San Joaquin River Restoration Program and the Bureau of Reclamation. We have agencies and districts within the Delta Mendota subbasin that are actively engaged in financial assistance agreements with the federal government to make sure that that program is going to be successful. I think that's key for the interconnected surface water component of what we're dealing with. Actively engaged in that. Next you'll hear from Mr. Ortega. He is the manager at Grasslands, and we have the largest contiguous wetlands west of the Mississippi, something that we're very proud of, looking at how the communities that I represent, the farmers, the environment can literally all work together in this, and you hear a little bit more about that. Most of our subbasin is considered economically distressed or disadvantaged. We don't like to think of ourselves as disadvantaged. I know it's a term, but we're very progressive, and we've put together a single plan that is achievable. Let me talk a little bit about what's in that plan. I think it is very progressive. One of the things that we wanted to take a very close look at is operating water levels in our groundwater wells within the historic hydrograph. We've set our MTs at 2015 water levels, something that is very, very progressive. And a quote from staff on the Tulare Lake Subbasin staff report was, setting groundwater levels at MTs at or above 2015 groundwater elevations would avoid undesirable results for other sustainability indicators. That's something that we've been paying careful attention to, specifically as we understand the challenges of water quality, historic legacy issues. These things are centuries old. And so in order to make sure that we do our part in protecting the beneficial uses and users of groundwater, that's why we've set our groundwater levels at 2015. It is achievable. We also have set a subsidence threshold of 2 feet anywhere within our subbasin. In that, we have interim milestones to make sure that we have these check-in points every year, every 5 years, and a glide path. If we're not likely to hit that 2 feet by 2040, we're going to take corrective actions. You'll see that in our plan. But just wanted to highlight that, and I'll relinquish the rest of my time for the next speaker. Thank you guys for the time. Appreciate it.
Thank you as well. Appreciate you addressing the board this morning and updating us on the good work and leadership that's going on. Appreciate it, Mr. Jarrett. Mr. Martin, Mr. Ortega.
Good morning, Chair, Directors Adamo, McGuire, and Firestone. Ricardo Ortega, General Manager of the Grassland Water District, Resource Conservation District, and GSA, located in Los Banos. The Delta Mendota Subbasin is a very unique and special place. We are very fortunate. We have strong federal coordination, lots of federal contracts, and our growers actively participate in a transfer program that results in the import of about 1.5 million acre feet of surface water every year. That is something that makes us very unique and very sustainable. When you consider our historic pumping, it equates to a very achievable 0.1 acre foot to the acre of overdraft to remedy. And so this is definitely within the ability of the subbasin to make some minor adjustments to achieve sustainability long term. One great example of a program that makes strides towards this commitment is the Los Banos Creek Water Resource Management Program. This is a collaboration between the Bureau of Reclamation, the San Joaquin River Exchange Contractors, San Luis Water District, and Grassland Water District. This will optimize the operation of an existing reservoir to make more regular releases, to recharge the aquifer, improve drinking water quality, restore a riparian corridor that really only sees water currently in one of maybe 5 years. And provide additional water supply for wildlife refuges and farms in Merced County. We're also working closely with the city of Los Banos to build recharge and regulating reservoirs, which will provide additional refuge water supply, reduce groundwater pumping, and improve drinking water quality. The Delta Mendota Subbasin has a long history of collaborations between the environment, the wildlife refuges, the ag districts, the farms, and the disadvantaged communities to manage surface water and groundwater sustainability, which has proven to be especially important given the climate extremes we are now experiencing. In May, we submitted the single GSP to State Water Board staff and to the public for comment, and we appreciate staff's review of the single GSP and inclusion in the staff report to the board. We also appreciate the numerous site visits that the directors and staff had made over the course of the development of the single GSP and the many meetings and through that iterative process. So thank you for your time, and look forward to the staff's report.
Mr. Ortega, really appreciate your time as well this morning for updating the board. Last and next, I'd like to call up Supervisor Scott Silvera.
Good morning, Chair, members of the board. My name is Scott Silvera. I serve on the Merced County Board of Supervisors representing District 5. Merced County has a higher poverty rate, more than double the state average, with 21.5% of residents living in poverty. This makes our residents some of the poorest in the state. My job as a county supervisor is to provide leadership in critical policy areas, ensure safe communities, promote economic development, protect public health, and plan and manage land use. My region, communities, residents, environment, and families all require affordable water reliability. Let me give you my perspective on where we are, and as an elected official, what I think the next step should be. In 2014, when SWRCB was enacted, it passed, it had many goals. Here are a few that I'd like to call to your attention. Groundwater sustainability. SWRCB helps ensure long-term groundwater sustainability for California's communities, agriculture, industries, and environment. This is especially important to the counties like Merced that are disadvantaged and heavily dependent on agriculture. You heard Mr. Martin speak earlier. I represent one of those disadvantaged unincorporated communities, one of those communities that literally, if you were looking on a scorecard, they check all the boxes of an unserved and underserved community. Local agency involvement. Local agencies are best able to manage groundwater, and SWRCB gives them a key role in water management and land use. With 23 agencies making up the Delta Mendota Subbasin, local management is critical and plays an especially important role to my job in land use planning. Groundwater sustainability plans. SWRCB requires local agencies to develop and implement GSPs for high and medium priority basins. GSPs outline how basins will be sustainably managed over the next 20 years. SWRCB also defined your job. The State Water Resources Control Board is to act as a backstop when basins fail. In order to fail, you must be given the opportunity to perform. The Delta Mendota consists of 23 GSAs. Let me pause there. That's 23 GSAs. And as of today, 22 of those have adopted the single GSP. And the only reason we don't have all 23 is just timing. And that's on their agenda to be adopted soon. The Delta Mendota consists of 23 GSAs, separate and distinct government entities that have worked together with your staff over the last year and a half with subject matter experts to develop one groundwater sustainability plan. One plan for all 23 GSAs. Rarely do separate government entities, 23 of them, agree on anything, let alone a complex, comprehensive groundwater sustainability plan that achieves balances in the prescribed timeline while meeting the needs of our iconic wetlands, diverse communities, emerging industries, our farming operations, our residents, our families, and doing so affordably is a Herculean effort. These collaborative partnerships have already made investments in groundwater recharge projects, surface water storage projects, water use efficiency efforts, stormwater capture, and more. And while this plan has been deemed deficient without merit nor based on actual performance, it deserves the opportunity to be fully implemented without causing specific identifiable harm to the public, our communities, the environment, and ultimately to our basin. As one of the poorest counties in the state, our future depends on a successful locally implemented plan. We have seen other regions throughout the state fracture their coordination, and today we are demonstrating how we have come together for the good of all groundwater users, domestic, environmental, agricultural, and industrial. A key effort in passing SGMA 10 years ago was that local control was not negotiable. The state's intervention was only added as a backstop for failure. We have not failed. We have only just begun. I will leave you with this quote from Thomas Jefferson. Whenever the people are well informed, they can be trusted with their own government. We are well informed. We are working with experts and your staff and will continue to do so, which means that the Delta Mendota Subbasin can be trusted to implement our GSP. Thank you for your time.
Thank you as well for your supervisor and your leadership. Appreciate the time this morning again to update the board. I know we'll be having plenty further discussion around the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, but really do appreciate the work that's gone on already and the engagement with us and the staff. So thank you. Appreciate the update this morning. All right, I believe that brings us to the end of our public forum commenters. Looking to my clerk to confirm so. Appreciate again everyone that's taking the time here to address the board and appreciate the work that's gone into it. Okay, now let's move on to board business. And our first item of board business is consideration of the board meeting minutes from September 17 and 18. Looking to my fellow board colleagues in case there is any adjustment, amendment, or discussion, and then otherwise.
Move adoption of the board minutes. I'll second.
Thank you both. Ms. Tyler, can you please call a roll call vote?
Vice Chair D'Adamo,
Aye.
Board Member Firestone,
Aye.
Board Member McGuire,
Aye.
and Chair Esquivel.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you as well. The board meeting minutes are adopted. That now brings us to a tranche of a couple of informational items. Item number 2 here, or first, will be an update on the groundwater ambient monitoring and assessment program. I'd like to call folks up. Give a moment while people transition. Thank you. Good morning to you all. Good to see you. Good morning, Mr. Springhorn. Thank you for joining us as well from the Department of Water Resources.
Good morning, Chair Esquivel, fellow board members. My name is Aaron Button, and I am the senior engineering geologist, and I oversee our groundwater ambient monitoring and assessment program, also known as the GAMMA program. And I am joined here today by my supervisor, Janice Zinke. She oversees our groundwater monitoring section, as well as my staff, Emily Haugen. She's an engineering geologist, and she will be providing an overview today of water quality related to natural recharge of the rainfall events that were associated with the 2023 atmospheric rivers. And so essentially the purpose of this is to provide our board and members of the public with a brief project background as to why we're here, what we're looking into, as well as to provide some detail regarding initial observations and what we intend to do moving forward as we continue to look and receive groundwater quality data. So we are also joined today by Stephen Springhorn. He is a supervising engineering geologist from the Sustainable Groundwater Management Office within the Department of Water Resources. And he will also be providing an overview of the work that DWR is concurrently doing related to what we're looking at. And so now I will pass it off to Emily Haugen, and she can continue from there. Thank you very much.
Next slide, please. Good morning, Chair Escobar and members of the board. At the beginning of 2023, there was a series of 9 atmospheric rivers over 26 days that produced an average of 11 inches of rainfall across California. In some places, rain totals exceeded 50 inches. This extreme amount of precipitation led to concerns about potential effects on shallow aquifers. Members of the public and non-governmental organizations engaged with state agency management to express concerns and discuss how to assess any potential variations to groundwater quality. Next slide, please. Recharge of aquifers occurs when surface water infiltrates the ground. Surface water can be from precipitation, lakes and rivers, and even irrigation. The quality of rainwater is typically fresh or considered free of constituents, but can mobilize constituents on the land surface and carry them into groundwater. Land surface contaminants can vary depending on land use. In urban areas, contaminants may be pesticides, petroleum products, and nutrients, while agricultural lands are typically pesticides and nutrients. These constituents can be used as a recharge indicator by looking for a variation in concentration from background levels, which we are calling a recharge signature. Next slide, please. To address concerns and discuss groundwater assessment criteria, monthly interagency coordination meetings were conducted. Personnel included staff from the Department of Water Resources, the California Department of Pesticide Regulation, the California Department of Public Health, and from the State Water Board, the Division of Water Quality, the Office of Sustainable Groundwater Management, the Division of Water Rights, and the Division of Drinking Water. Next slide, please. In an attempt to answer the question, we utilized currently available resources to address potential changes to groundwater by identifying a network of existing wells with historical water quality data. This data can be used to compare water quality over time and may assist in identifying changes in groundwater quality related to atmospheric rivers and subsequent rainfall events. We utilized the Gamma Groundwater Information System, or Gamma GIS, which combines and standardizes multiple data sets from federal, state, and local agencies to develop a passive monitoring network. There were several requirements for a well to be included in the monitoring network, including a minimum of 4 sampling events over a 5-year period prior to the atmospheric river event. This requirement reduced the potential wells significantly since most wells have only been sampled once or twice. The sampling event had to have taken place either in 2022 or 2023. The recency of the sampling event indicates whether a well may still be active and an agency is still collecting water quality data from it. Wells were selected within 1,000 feet of an inundated area as depicted by satellite imagery. Recharged water is more likely to be detected in a sample from a well that is located closer to areas of flooding. It can take days to months for water to percolate through the subsurface to reach the aquifer. Areas of intentional recharge, such as managed aquifer recharge areas and the flood recharge diversions, were considered, but no wells that met the previous requirements were located near these areas. In the end, we identified approximately 140 wells to be included in our monitoring network. 56 are public supply wells, which are deeper and less likely to indicate a recharge signature in a short period of time. 81 of the wells are monitoring wells, which are typically shallow and more likely to indicate a recharge signature in a timely manner. The remaining wells were irrigation wells and a domestic well. Next slide, please. Data from the monitoring network is publicly available on the California Open Data Portal so that anyone may utilize this monitoring network data. The dataset is updated quarterly. In addition, a story map was developed with the public in mind that provides a brief project background, a monitoring network description, and other helpful information such as precipitation records. The map on the right of the slide shows the location of the monitoring network. Some wells may be overlapping because they are all associated with the same project. The colored layer identifies disadvantaged communities based on the median household income from 2020. The pie chart shows that about 40% of the wells are in disadvantaged communities. Next slide, please. As this project progresses, we will continue to compile data as it is made available in Gamma GIS and update it on the Open Data Portal. We will also be using this data in an attempt to discern a recharge signature using a constituent's concentration over time. A recharge signature could look like an increase in constituent concentration after a precipitation event, followed by a decrease in the constituent if the recharge is from fresh or non-contaminated precipitation. The opposite would also be considered a signature. If the concentration were to decrease initially, then increase as recharge dilutes the aquifer. Alternatively, if the initial increase or decrease is not identified in the sample data, a change in concentration from the background levels could also indicate that precipitation had an impact on the groundwater. Next slide, please. Preliminary observations indicate that water from the atmospheric river events may have reached the well screens of some wells in the passive monitoring network. This was determined by using nitrate concentrations as a recharge water indicator. Of the approximately 140 wells selected for the monitoring network, about 112 wells have nitrate data since 2022 that can be used. Of those 112 wells, 24 of them have a possible recharge signature. And of those 24 wells, 10 wells have an initial decrease in concentration of nitrate, while the remaining 14 wells have an initial increase in nitrate. Next slide, please. Nitrate concentration versus time was plotted for wells with nitrate data and compared to the wet-dry years as defined by DWR in the California's Groundwater Semi-Annual Conditions Update. The blue vertical rectangles represent wet years, while the orange and brown rectangles represent dry years. The three examples shown here are from shallow environmental monitoring wells. The vertical red line indicates the timing of the atmospheric rivers. The first plot in the upper right corner is an example of a well with an initial decrease in concentration after the atmospheric events, followed by a plateau of concentrations that are still different from the background concentrations. This well is located in Yuba County. The second plot in the lower left corner is an example of an initial increase followed by a decrease and plateauing of concentrations at a different level than the background. The final plot is an example of no initial spike in concentration, but a difference in background concentrations. These two wells are from the same project site located in San Joaquin County. These are not conclusive findings and will require continued observation. Next slide, please. Our goal to continue this project is to select a few sites and collect additional data, including well construction, land use, and records of historical flooding to assist in determining a possible recharge signature, and ideally when the recharge would occur for those wells. The State Water Board will continue to provide technical assistance to DWR and coordination of interagency meetings. Finally, data collected will be made available on California Open Data Portal as data is received. Next slide, please. This is our contact information, including the generic gamma inbox. And now we will turn it over to Stephen Springhorn with DWR.
All right, thank you, Ms. Haugen. Good morning, Chair and board members. Thank you for the opportunity to be here this morning, and happy water year, new water year. It's a great day to start things out, be talking about some water year and groundwater important topics we're working on here. And so with the start of the new water year, we know that we've seen, as Ms. Haugen and Mr. Button mentioned, past water years have been extreme dry, extreme wet. And through those extremes, we've been building a team across state agencies and with local partners and community members to try and better understand the effects of these extreme events on water quality and water levels. And so we know we have the new water year in front of us. We don't know what we're going to get, but we're going to be prepared. And we're doing a lot across the state agencies to build that preparedness and readiness for what comes ahead. So today I'll be talking about this pilot effort that we're embarking on. Ms. Haugen and Mr. Button gave some good details of the first steps and the technical elements of data compilation. And I'll be giving an overview of some of the higher level background of what got us to here and where we're going moving forward with this effort. And really the effort itself is to be evaluating water quality in flooded and managed recharge areas in the state, mostly in the San Joaquin Valley. Next slide, please. So I think we're all familiar across the state and in this room and across the state with the water extremes we've seen in the past in in the current environment, even within water years, we're seeing big swings. And so we realize, and we all know that we need to be preparing and taking important steps to take advantage of those big years when we've got a lot of water in the system, to use that water in a responsible way and in a thoughtful way for those times where we need it in the droughts. And so next click, please. And what has really put a lot of momentum and inertia behind this effort is the passage of Sustainable Groundwater Management Act in 2015 in the heart of 2 droughts ago. But there's a number of other efforts that are underway that we're trying to bring together to move forward here. And next click, please. And really with these extremes, trying to balance these extremes of too dry or too wet, we have our California's groundwater basins, 515 groundwater basins across the state. They represent a tremendous opportunity for us to use them in a sustainable way, but we have to understand them more than better than we've ever known before. And there's been a lot of work to do that, but we're going to be building on that as we go. And so next slide, please. So how we do that in utilizing our natural infrastructure, which in our groundwater basins really represent the largest and lowest cost form of water storage going forward. And so we're really doing a lot to work with the local agencies as they characterize their groundwater basins through SGMA. So then we can also fill data gaps and continue to compile and advance that state of knowledge. And so we all know the state water system in California, it's very complex and impressive, but next click, please. We really need to have that same effort and understanding for our natural infrastructure, our groundwater basins. And so it's maybe not as intuitive of seeing a canal or a reservoir, but we have a tremendous built and natural infrastructure in our groundwater basins, from the over 300,000 production wells that take water out of the groundwater basins to the hundreds, if not thousands, of recharge basins that put it back in, and all of the other, and the basins themselves that shown here in the blue. And so our goal is to be better characterizing these basins, and this pilot that we'll talk about is really a step in that direction. Next slide, please. So those are sort of, I described the physical drivers for this. Now, as we all know, there's a lot of policy drivers and directives. I mentioned it a little bit, SGMA, Sustainable Groundwater Management Act is there, safer and human right to water, climate resiliency and adaptation. All of these on this slide are really pushing us forward to better utilizing in a sustainable way these groundwater basins. And so it's with these drivers in mind that we're going to be embarking on this pilot effort that we'll talk about next. Next slide, please. And so just a quick highlight of what we're doing at the department. And this is by no means we're doing this alone. We're working with our colleagues and the technical teams at the State Water Board, Department of Fish and Wildlife, Department of Food and Ag, and many others, and pesticide regulation. But some of the items that we've been pushing forward that sort of this effort will tap into is the flood managed aquifer recharge effort that has been around for quite some time, and some more recent watershed studies that have been in the San Joaquin Valley. We're continuing to try and learn by doing, by on-farm demonstration efforts through FloodMar, and really working with the groundwater sustainability agencies that are doing a lot of this work. We're also looking at multi-benefit floodplain restoration opportunities. So recharge, but also looking at some of those other floodplain restoration or environmental benefits that come with that. And then, as I mentioned, groundwater basin characterization and recharge suitability. And so this pilot that we're talking about today is really in our effort to understand the physical characteristics and the geochemical characteristics of our basins and how those change with actions that occur in any given year. And then we also have a number of planning and regulatory assistance actions, working very closely with the state board staff on supporting temporary water right applications, trying to advance that and be ready for flood diversions and recharge. And then finally, just financial assistance, where there's been a lot of state grants that the department has administered that are advancing sustainable groundwater management, but also over $100 million have gone to, specifically for recharge enhancement. Next slide, please. So I wanted to start with the team that we've assembled here, and it's important because without a well thought out structure of our team and who we talk to and engage, we won't be as successful in this effort. So we wanted to really bring a good group together at multiple levels of state government and local government, as well as local community members. So we're engaging the USGS and really leveraging the great partnership that the Gamma team has with the USGS and their water quality expertise. We're building our connections with the USDA and some new sustainable agricultural water groups that are now established, which is really exciting. And then the formal or the current work group that we have, the State Agency Water Quality Pilot Work Team, it includes members from the department, the Water Board, Department of Pesticide Regulation, and Public Health. And so this is the team that has been working for the last almost 2 years now, meeting monthly to really start to build this coalition and understand how we can get to where we need to go. And also we're working to get existing contract support for us to really ramp this up, as I'll talk about next. And then finally, and really importantly, the local dynamic and the local community members and local agencies that are on the ground experiencing these extremes, managing these extremes day in and day out. And that's a collection of non-government organizations, that's groundwater sustainability agencies, academics, and all of that. And so we've been engaging them and we'll continue to be engaging them more fully as we get up and rolling on this project. And so next slide, please. And so what the project is. So really the purpose, as my colleagues already mentioned a little bit already, is to investigate the impacts and benefits of floodwater inundation and repeated managed groundwater recharge on water quality. We know it's been going on for a long time. There's a huge emphasis in recharge under SGMA. And so we know it's going to increase over time. So we really need to be generating the data to feed into and analyze that information to understand what is happening. Where are there impacts from that activity? Where are there benefits from that activity? And impacts or benefits to who and which groups? And so how we're going to be doing this is we're going to be establishing a monitoring network to better characterize the effects of floodwater inundation and managed aquifer recharge across the valley. We're going to start in the San Joaquin Valley. And so this map, it's a little hard to see, but this is from water year 2023. So all those blue areas are areas of possible inundation. So this is from a satellite map that was sort of looking at and trying to understand where there was inundation across the valley. And so many of those blue dots are, sort of the more notable ones are the Tulare Lake that came back. But also a lot of those little dots should not be overcounted because those are all the pieces of infrastructure, groundwater infrastructure that were filled up and putting water back into the ground when it was in the system. And that's through a lot of hard work at the local levels through GSAs and farmers and others. And so most of what we're going to be doing is looking for existing wells that are out there. So we're starting small, but this will be the first important step. So about 50 wells is what we have budget for and our initial goal, to be finding and working with locals to get all of what's needed, access agreements and all of that, so we can find 50 sites. We're prioritizing those more shallow wells, or at least wells that have a shallow component, ideally dedicated monitoring wells, but we know those don't exist everywhere. And also in those areas, in those communities, as have been defined in the last water plan, frontline communities that experience the first and worst type of impact from these extreme events. And so we're going to be looking there and working with GSAs and others in these areas. And then we're going to try and increase frequency. So our goal is 50 sites initially, measuring these sites quarterly over the next 5 years. And so where we plan to do this, we have statewide reach with our contracts and our team, but we're really going to be focusing again in the San Joaquin Valley first. And then Related to timeline, again, we have funding already ready to go for 5 years of this, but we are looking to connect this effort. So all this effort that goes in right now, we want to connect it to the future of GAMA, the future of the department's existing groundwater level and water quality sampling events, so we can keep these samples going in the period of record going, so we can see these trends over the long term. And so really the most important thing you can get is a long-term period of record, because it tells you a lot about a certain place in the groundwater system. So really the focus is on data collection. We're starting small, but it's important to get that data. And then that data is going to get rolled in and incorporated into existing efforts to analyze that data and come out with results of what it means, whether there's impacts or benefits to these activities. And there'll be probably both of those in many different places, and see how that changes geographically. Next slide, please. And so where we're headed next is we're going to continue our state agency coordination. We're going to continue working with our local partners as described. And really the next step is to define the the sampling plan. And that is really the next step, and then get out in the field and start to sample. We're going to be ramping up over time. So we're not going to get all those 50 this winter, but we're going to be building to get as many as we can. And the goal is to get samples before the storms happen, during the storms, after the storms, as best we can, to give us the best look at conditions. And we're going to continue to be leveraging the FloodMar network, which is a really robust, great community of practice that exists. They have a water quality action team established, and so we'll be engaging that group of experts and expertise there, and continuing to work with our local partners at the NGO groups, as well as our GSA contacts across the state. So again, with this data coming in, we're going to explore opportunities to put this into some type of decision support tool. So that's not the scope with this effort, but that others within the department and other state agencies are looking into that to see how can we have some type of decision support tool of where might be the best places to enhance recharge and where there might be impacts from that. And so we can, again, try and inform decisions that are happening on the ground. And then just more generally, as we go through this, we're going to continue to connect the flood and drought and groundwater managers. Sometimes that's one person that wears 3 hats. Sometimes there's different people that haven't talked to each other yet. And so it's we want to continue to build that network on the ground with those different managers that are doing important work. And being a geologist, we can't forget that we have to continue to better understand the groundwater system itself. So then that will inform all of the above. So I think with that, I think that's the last slide, and happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you all. Really appreciative of this work. I know myself and others, certainly NGOs and community groups, but also other board members, all very concerned around what the impacts were on recharge from the 2023 year. And I appreciate that this is our attempt to kind of get a handle around sort of the ambient or background water quality levels that we're seeing and responses. I think there's a real opportunity as well to make sure there's more site-specific information, so we're understanding the individual impact of what are a lot of projects I know happening for recharge. And so, but really appreciate all the coordination that's gone on here. It is a very complex question that we're seeking to answer here. So it requires all of us to be putting our resources together. And so really do appreciate that coordination across state agencies, the feds, and importantly, local groups as well, to make sure we're understanding how best we can protect water quality and increase groundwater levels at the same time, and know that, again, that can be very site specific. I appreciate that there's protections in place when it comes to recently passed legislation that mirrors the executive orders that we put into place in 2023 that are meant to protect water quality ultimately, not applying floodwaters for recharge to places where there was recent pesticide applications or are enrolled in the dairy programs, places that we know could potentially worsen water quality as it mobilizes nutrients and nitrates down into the groundwater. So a lot to continue to keep track of and cover and try to respond to, but really appreciate the work that's gone on here to start to get our arms wrapped around this critical question, especially as you noted, Mr. Springhorn, with the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act and the increase in these activities that we'll be seeing. So I guess just on that, where does, and here I think it'd be good to begin to better standardize some requirements when it comes to the testing that is needed ultimately when we talk about specific groundwater projects. But just wondering what the thought is of not just looking at these wells and ambient background water quality, but more project specific data. What's the opportunity to kind of see the forest for the trees across to some of that work? And is there thought around how we might be incorporating that into this project into the future?
Yeah, great question. Anyone else want to jump on that? I have some thoughts.
Is your question directly asking about specific constituents that we can sample on, for most of the wells, or?
Yeah, well, and more kind of wondering when it comes to specific groundwater recharge projects and any data that may be generated around the impact of water quality there, how it might be envisioned that it's incorporated into this project that, is again, looking at these specific sampling wells.
Well, I think at a high level, I think ideally we'd like to have all this data publicly available, and we'd like to have a relatively consistent, analytical suite. Beyond that, I don't know if Stephen, if you wanted to make your comment, might help me, kind of understand what we're after a little bit better.
Sure thing. Yeah, a great question. And really it starts with compiling what exists. And Ms. Haugen mentioned the first phase is really compiling to see what exists within the GAMMA database, which is a great database. But we know there's still gaps. And so there's been a tremendous amount of work done at the academic level, at the different universities, working with growers in the field. And so I think we have already started, but we'll be really ramping that up to try and compile all of that best available data on that, Chair. So I think that'll help us understand, number one, connect, because those relationships are so important, because we can get a lot of the information that exists, and then we can contribute to those studies for further advancing this sort of state of research and information. So I would say compilation of existing data is really number one. And then based on that, and then communications with, and it's not just academics that have a lot of information. There's some of the members of our contractor team have a tremendous amount of information. Now we have to be aware and respect the privacy components of water quality at someone's domestic well. So we're working through that. But we have self-help enterprises on the team that have a lot of information and expertise. And so it's academics, it's the NGO community, and others that we'll be bringing together to understand, I think, to your question of how can we really scrape all of the available information, and that'll inform then where are the remaining gaps. And I think the other thing too, as Mr. Button mentioned, open data is incredibly important. So that data that either a domestic well owner approves us making public, or the data we collect through state funds, which is public, we want that to come into a standardized, accessible open data platform so that we can use it, but anyone else can use it for any other study that's going on. So I think those are the two things that really come to mind related to that.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And I appreciate all the data being published on the open data platform here. Again, I definitely agree that it's not just for our own sake that we're developing this. It's really to be able to put it back out for local decision makers. And what it comes to mind is certainly, I know with all the groundwater sustainability agencies out there, and they're looking at recharge and recharge projects, there may be ways of activating them and opening up whatever information they have when it comes to specific recharge projects that they have, and any monitoring that they're conducting, whether because of CEQA or other requirements out there to help inform some of this project. So just thank you. Really appreciate, again, the great work. This is a critical topic. Looking to fellow board colleagues, if they have question, comment. Vice Chair.
This is really informative. Thank you so much. I have a couple of questions, and I'll start off with coordination, and I appreciate the slide indicating all the different partners that you're working with on this, federal, state, and local, but there were a few that just seemed missing. So I see you have USDA, but not CDFA. It seems that they would be an important partner. We have an MOU with CDFA, and I know I've had multiple conversations with the secretary. She's a big advocate for groundwater recharge, but also water quality. And they've got the Healthy Soils program. So it just seems that there'd be, useful conversations that could occur. And I'm saying this for, our folks as well, in light of the fact that we have the MOU. I know you mentioned flood control agencies, but didn't see specifically the Central Valley Flood Protection Board. I'm assuming that they're involved, but, just mentioning, because I know sometimes they have their own programs, and sometimes there's not, a lot of discussions between the agencies. And then lastly, Irrigated Lands Regulatory Program and the management zones. I know they're doing a lot of work. We keep, every time we have a Sigma item before us on water quality, we always remind them, coordinate with irrigated lands and management zones. And then when CV Salts comes before us for updates, we always remind them to coordinate, of course, with the GSAs. And we do see that coordination is improving, but it could improve even further. And then the specific questions that I have, could you talk a little bit more about the vision of what this tool might look like? I'm picturing where it might nest, and and in my own mind, I'm looking here at the groundwater basin characterization and recharge suitability. Is that where you would see it nesting, or in a standalone? How do you see this information coming out once you're able to connect the dots, not just providing the specific information on samples, but in terms of guidance on suitability?
Yeah, thank you for your comments. And yeah, so on your second comment there, I think that the basin characterization and suitability would be one outlet for that. I think where this would really, again, this pilot is to generate the data to go into that, inform what tool might get built. So we're still pretty early days on that, but there's a number of groups within that FloodMar network, sustainable conservation, others working with sustainable conservation and the department and our FloodMar group are really, there's a whole nother effort on that decision support tool. And so I think that's really where it'll come out because there is a lot of coordination with growers that sustainable conservation and others like them have. And so really learning from the ground, bringing what is needed to inform those important local decisions. I think that's going to be a really key part of that. So I'm not as aware of the latest and greatest elements of the decision support tool, but we know that the data that we are going to be generating and providing need to flow into that. And so members of that team who are much more of an expert in that than I am are on our work team. And so they're going to be helping us structure the sampling plan so that what comes out of that will go right into that decision support tool. So I don't have a very good answer for you right now, but happy to get more information and send it to you as we do.
Yeah, thank you. And so, as you said, flow, that's my last question. And I know it's way too early to tell, but, as a layperson, someone without technical expertise, just figuring, infiltration rates, soil types. So presumably this tool would be able to overlay all that information to see if there seems to be a correlation. And just would like to get your comments on that and our staff as well.
Yeah, great point. And so that really is where we're trying to connect as many relevant efforts as possible. So right now we have a team within the department working with other members, state agencies to understand from the groundwater basin up to the surface, right? From looking at the physical characteristics, what controls those infiltration rates that you mentioned. And so with that effort, that will get fed into then how do we sample? So how deep, where are the data gaps? How do we answer questions like you had there of infiltration rates? And if you put it in a certain, if you put water in a certain area, whether it's flooded or it's intentionally managed to go there, we'll have as best of the information we can of what happens next as it goes from the surface to into the groundwater basin. And that's where we are partnering with GSAs and local entities on some early pilots for these basin characterization efforts. So we have a lot of data at the state, right? And we're compiling that. We just collected 16,000 line miles of airborne electromagnetic data. It's sort of like an MRI for the subbasins, and you can look from the surface down to 1,000 feet. But the GSAs have a lot of the site-specific, and Chair Esquivel mentioned that site-specific matters, especially with water quality. And so I think we're going to connect the basin characterization efforts with this to inform the sampling, and then we'll be able to better answer those questions that you had. Yeah, and just before maybe others have, I just wanted to hit on the coordination. Thank you for that feedback. We have had some preliminary discussions with or more with those different entities, but we'll definitely strengthen those connections. Thank you for that input.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if I could just add our upcoming contracts with the USGS Gamma, we are focusing the scope parts of it on special studies related to recharge and water quality to address and try to answer those questions that you have. So that'll be great. And hopefully we can have another information item with some additional information on that.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Board Member Firestone.
Sure, and maybe I'd echo all of the points that have been made, and just also just want to emphasize also the importance of Gamma and all that is enabling here. If we didn't have Gamma, we wouldn't be anywhere near where we are in terms of being able to do this kind of study and understanding. And I just want to recognize how important that program is. And I really appreciate the transparency and accessibility of the data and the collaboration and partnerships. It's just, I think, a really vital program that enables us to take advantage of these atmospheric rivers and make better decisions and understanding. So just want to emphasize that. Just, I think two things maybe to emphasize that, both the chair and vice chair mentioned is that I've been involved in the Central Valley CV salts and nitrate management efforts for a really long time. And of course, part of that folks are focusing on now with the management zones is how do we improve water quality with, and potentially use targeted recharge. And so I'm really hopeful that this project will be coordinating really closely with those efforts in addition to the GSAs. I mean, the GSAs are, every tour I've been on recently has been looking at very project-specific opportunities to improve both water supply in particular, and hopefully water quality ultimately for a number of community wells, particularly certain projects and GSAs, but the management zones in particular are totally focused on water quality. And so, and they've been trying to model this or do pilots for a very long time. So I really want to see, I'm always anxious to get to actions and not just studying things, because we're never going to have all the data and analysis that we want to have, but people are making decisions now and doing projects now. So I'm hopeful that there's maybe we can hear more about like particular projects that are ongoing particularly with CV salts in the management zones that are where we're seeing some results as this progresses. And then also just on something that Chair mentioned, in addition to a decision support tool, I do think it's important that there's a mechanism for feedback here for us for the types of requirements and expectations that are appropriate to put on recharge efforts to make sure that they're not having unintended consequences and that they're having the beneficial impacts that we're all trying to make happen. And so, it's always finding that balance between, we don't want to put too many requirements that are going to be expensive, and but we also want to make sure that we're understanding the benefits and potential impacts, and this type of program will help us continue to refine that, how we strike that balance. So just appreciate the efforts. Really exciting program. I think this is just one of the most important things we could be doing right now as we're charting a pathway forward with climate change and all these management decisions and plans that are getting made. So appreciate the work.
Thank you so much, board member. And completely agree. And what's, a bit daunting is just the scale of the area and the landscape we're talking about. And so, I appreciate the attempt to try to get, representative wells kind of across, but it's huge, the landscape we're talking about, and the data points. The more data we have, the more granular data we have, I think the more confidence we can all have in the work. But just thank you. Anything further? Okay. We have a couple of commenters, so we can hear from them, and would first like to call up Angela Islas, be followed by Kaya Rivers. Miss Islas, if you're unmuted, you may be away from your computer at this point, so we can come back to you, and we can go next then to Kaya Rivers.
Good morning.
Morning, good to see you.
Nice to see you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Kaya Rivers. I'm a policy advocate at Community Water Center. And I want to express our appreciation for the state really working on this issue to further analyze recharge and water quality impacts. And I really appreciate the discussion today across state agencies. It's really great to see. As we know, recharge can really be used as a tool to improve communities' access to drinking water by mitigating drinking water impacts such as decreased water quality and water quantity. And like mentioned in the presentation today, communities' drinking water is really on the front lines of climate change. As communities are dependent on groundwater, communities dependent on groundwater are especially vulnerable to climate change, charged, dry, and wet extreme events, whiplash events, which can cause wells to go dry, leaving families without water for drinking, cleaning, or cooking, or wells can become inundated with bacteria or contaminants, ultimately making their water unsafe to use. And as recharge can bolster communities' access to clean water supply, it can also further threaten communities' drinking water if done without the necessary preparation. So again, I really want to express our appreciation for the state recognizing that recharge can mobilize these contaminants found in the soil and into the groundwater and further burden communities already burdened access to drinking water. And this preparation is really key to better respond to these increasingly more common climate change extreme events, and especially as entities move towards emergency and permanent recharge in order to balance water budgets. So in order to be successful, it's really important to understand how recharge can positively and negatively impact drinking water, map locations where recharge should and shouldn't go, identify best practices for entities to use, such as groundwater quality monitoring and soil monitoring, and understand how recharge can impact how groundwater flows and can potentially impact domestic wells. So again, this work is really crucial for making progress towards meeting the state's goals, such as outlined under SB 659, which requires the state to establish best standards on how to conduct recharge, utilizing mapping and evaluating drinking water impacts caused by source recharge, water, soil quality, or recharge sites proximity to drinking water wells. So again, I really look forward, or I really appreciate the work that the state's doing here. And I look forward to working with the board and DWR to ensuring that drinking water is protected as we harness these wet seasons. So thank you.
Thank you as well, Ms. Rivers. Really appreciate your advocacy and contributions here to the work. And just thanks for collaborating with us and helping to ensure that we're looking at this information and making it, using it to be the best decision makers we can. So thank you. It's much appreciated.
Thank you.
Next, go back to Angela Islas.
Hi, good morning. You can hear me okay, right?
Good morning. Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So good morning, everyone. Angela Islas here with Central California Environmental Justice Network. I don't have a lot to comment. I just want to second my colleague Kaya's comments. I know that CCJN is really looking forward to collaborating with CWC and other partners, as well as with DWR, Stephen's team, and all other agencies to really look closely on this matter around recharge. I think for us at CCJN, we work primarily a lot in Southwest Fresno County, and that area is under the Kings Water Alliance boundaries for CV salts. And, we have a domestic well community there that has been impacted by nitrate contamination, as well as drought impacts. And, we can't forget as well GSA activities with over extraction. So there's a multiple impact for this community that, we are looking to really understand and see how groundwater recharge can be a potential solution for this community. So I think with the pilot, I know that it's going to really focus on a lot of the existing recharge sites, even under the EO. But, we're not wanting to forget other communities that, really can see recharge as a potential opportunity. So I wanted to elevate just that point right there for Southwest Fresno County, and especially those communities there. But overall, I think that, this is Board Member Firestone had mentioned, this is a really tremendous opportunity also to really look into not just kind of how we can understand recharge better, but even on top of that, I think trying to understand the multi-use of recharge, because a lot of these projects are trying to focus on the multi-use for not just farming or even other solutions to addressing groundwater capture, but we're also wanting to make sure that communities are able to have that solution for safe and affordable drinking water. And so I think, this is a really tremendous kind of milestone for where we're at with elevating our project management actions to this level for community benefit. And just, again, really looking forward to exploring this under CCJN with all of you to really see how much we can potentially build on this goal that we have in the state for all communities to have access to water. So thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate the presentation as well.
Thank you as well for your time and contributions here. Really appreciate the partnership, Ms. Islas. Looking forward to, I know, what will be further updates and discussion in all of this. So thank you. All right, that brings us to the end of our commenters here. Looking to see one last moment if there's anything further from folks here at the dais. Hearing none, thank you both, or thank you all, and really appreciate the really great work again that's gone on. Look forward to further update here. Thank you for updating the board and elevating all of this really needed and appreciated discussion. So thank you. All right, that wraps item number 2 and brings us to item number 3, which is another informational item, this time on our underground storage tank cleanup program and GeoTracker. Give a moment for folks to swap in. Good morning. Good to see you all.
Good to see you all too. Just making sure that I was like, okay, got the mic on. All right. Good morning, Chair Esquivel and members of the board. My name is Julie Johnson. I'm an engineering geologist in the underground storage tank cleanup and GeoTracker unit in the Division of Water Quality. With me today is Stephen Mullery, also an engineering geologist in the UST cleanup unit and our GeoTracker technical lead. Dana Cordano, a senior engineering geologist and the supervisor of our unit, and Mercy Rayer, counsel for the UST program. Today, we are presenting to you a high-level overview of the Underground Storage Tank Cleanup Program, or UST Cleanup Program, and GeoTracker, the State Water Board's largest water quality and geospatial database. The last time our group gave a presentation on GeoTracker was around 2018, so we wanted to bring an update to the current board. Next slide, please. So first, I'll give an overview of the UST Cleanup Program, what we do, who we work with, and our program priorities for the next couple of years. Then I'll pass it off to Stephen to talk in depth about the GeoTracker database, what it is, how it's used within and outside of the State Water Board, and how it's managed. Finally, we'll round out our presentation with a list of upcoming projects that span both the UST Cleanup Program and GeoTracker. Before I dive in, I just wanted to mention that we're presenting on the UST Cleanup Program and the GeoTracker database together because these programs are managed by the same team of 7 staff here in DWQ. Next slide, please. So the State Water Board's UST Cleanup Program implements the federal UST Cleanup Program statewide through a memorandum of agreement with the United States Environmental Protection Agency, or US EPA, which was initiated in the 1980s. The UST Cleanup Program is in charge of all corrective actions at UST cleanup sites across California. Currently, our program focuses its efforts on petroleum USTs. In the future, the UST program will likely expand to also oversee non-petroleum USTs as specified in statute. The program's regulatory authority is through the Water Code and the Health and Safety Code. And the primary State Water Board resolutions directing the program are Resolution number 9249, which established policies and procedures for investigation and cleanup of unauthorized discharges, Resolution number 2012-0016, which adopted the low threat closure policy, and Resolution number 2013-0001, which established the UST Cleanup Program's local oversight program. Since the UST Cleanup Program was established, it has been highly effective, closing approximately 40,700 petroleum UST cases throughout California. Today, we have approximately 1,500 open UST cleanup cases. Many of these remaining cases are greater than 20 years old and are some of the most complex cases in the UST universe. Therefore, these require more resources, creative problem solving, and collaboration to move towards closure. Next slide, please. So a large part of our successes in the UST Cleanup Program, especially in recent years, is the great relationships that we've built with multiple agencies and groups, both within and outside of the water boards. Internally, we work closely with the UST Cleanup Fund. The DWQ's UST Cleanup Program is the program manager statewide, and we work to ensure that the program meets the requirements of the fund. We collaborate constantly with all 9 regional water boards, and we also work with our sister unit, the UST Leak Prevention Program, to coordinate our efforts. Outside of the State Water Board, we work closely with the US EPA and the county-based local oversight programs, or LOPs. The LOPs are county agencies that are certified by the State Water Board to implement the UST Cleanup Program within their jurisdiction. Certification occurs every 3 years, and there are currently 5 LOPs that we work with. Next slide, please. So this slide shows an overview of what our program does on a day-to-day basis. I've split our duties into core responsibilities and program tasks. As you can see, our unit is high producing and we work on a wide variety of projects. As I mentioned earlier, DWQ's UST Cleanup Unit manages the Petroleum UST Cleanup Program statewide. We set program priorities and provide technical and programmatic support to the regional water boards and our local oversight programs, the LOPs. We frequently coordinate with the US EPA on program implementation and the stalled case initiative, which has been highly successful at restarting progress on stalled cases and getting them to closure. In fact, I'm pleased to share that the team received the 2023 National Notable Achievement Award from the US EPA for our efforts in moving stalled cases and stuck cases towards closure. Additionally, our team manages GeoTracker, which Stephen will discuss in more detail. Everyone on our team works on the GeoTracker help desk, serving members of the public, regulators, and many others, in addition to our UST cleanup program duties. Next slide, please. So for the next 2 fiscal years, we have 4 main priorities. As climate change impacts intensify, a need for a statewide sea level rise vulnerability assessment tool was identified. In collaboration with the Department of Toxic Substances Control, or DTSC, and in coordination with the Ocean Protection Council, we are developing a statewide sea level rise and groundwater rise vulnerability assessment tool and publicly available interactive map. We also meet with a team of University of California researchers who are working on a similar project that's focused just on the Bay Area. We are starting with sea level rise and groundwater rise on this tool, and we plan to expand this to a full climate change tool to kind of bring in layers from a bunch of different places so that it's more comprehensive for all who will be using this tool. We plan to roll out the statewide tool and public map in the summer of 2026. Our program is also focused on incorporating racial equity considerations into our work. A few months ago, we started a tribal engagement task force consisting of program staff from the Division of Water Quality and the regional boards, with the goal of coming up with a meaningful way to share about the cleanup programs, our work, and also to engage with tribes throughout the corrective action process. This has not been something that's been done well in the past and is a huge priority for our program statewide. The stalled case initiative, which I talked about earlier, remains one of our top program priorities. Stephen will talk a little bit more about a tool that we're working on for that. And lastly, our group is supporting the UST leak prevention program's rewrite of the California Code of Regulations, Title 23, Chapter 26. Or Chapter 16, apologies. GeoTracker is a vital component to advancing these priorities. We will be building features and tools for regulators and the public to support them. And now I'll pass it off to Stephen to talk about GeoTracker. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Julie. Good morning, Board Chair Esquivel and members of the board. I'm Stephen Mullery, a geologist and the GeoTracker technical lead for the DWQ's UST cleanup and GeoTracker unit. In the next few slides, I will provide a high-level overview of what GeoTracker is and some upcoming projects that we plan for this system. Next slide, please. All right, so in 1997, legislative mandates such as Assembly Bill 592 and 2000, along with Senate Bill 1189, required the State Water Board to develop a geographical-based system to evaluate risk to water resources and public health, along with making decisions regarding existing or potential underground storage tank release sites. In March of 2000, the State Water Board initiated a project to implement GeoTracker statewide in the effort to replace the existing UST tracking system known as Lustus. The GeoTracker system currently tracks compliance data for sites that either impact or have the potential to impact water quality in California. And we also want to mention that GeoTracker is also referenced in the California Code of Regulations, Health and Safety Code, and the Water Code. Next slide, please. All right, so I love this slide just because it shows how large GeoTracker has become over the past 24 years. As I mentioned in the previous slide, GeoTracker was originally developed to track leaking underground storage tank sites in California. However, since then, more water board programs have been eventually added to the system. And today, GeoTracker houses over 12 different water board programs. And for your reference, most of the general programs are shown in this slide, but just know that this is not the exhaustive list of all the programs. Next slide, please. All right, so since there are so many programs that utilize GeoTracker, there is a significant amount of documents and data uploaded to the system. To date, there are over 2.5 million documents and over 1.2 million individual data submittals in the system. GeoTracker has a variety of features that are utilized by regulators, by the regulated community and the public to assist with accessing these files and data they are looking for. One such tool is an interactive map where users can view the sites and their associated data for an area they're looking at. All of these features and uploaded files are available 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. GeoTracker also can import data from multiple data repositories. This is very critical for our system's existing tools. For example, to support DWQ's racial equity efforts, GeoTracker has added OEHA's CalEnviro Screen 3.0 and 4.0, along with US EPA's Climate and Economic Justice Screening tool to assist with highlighting disadvantaged communities statewide. Another example is related to the Water Board's PFAS effort. Currently, PFAS sampling data related to non-drinking water sources are stored in GeoTracker, while PFAS sampling associated with drinking water sources are stored in the Division of Drinking Water's Safe Drinking Water Information System, also known as SWRCB. In the effort to show PFAS data from both systems on one public portal, our team worked with DDW staff to bring all the relevant information into GeoTracker and to display it on an interactive map that the public can access. Importing this data from other repositories will be important for other GeoTracker projects our unit is currently working on, which I'll get into later in this presentation. Next slide, please. All right, so before I go into the upcoming projects, I did want to clarify that the Water Board owns the data stored within GeoTracker. However, our programmers, EcoInteractive, owns the system's mainframe. EcoInteractive was the original development vendor, and they worked with the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory to develop GeoTracker in the late 1990s. EcoInteractive currently has a software as a service contract with the Water Boards to provide maintenance-related services for the GeoTracker system. EcoInteractive has maintained this database for over 20 years, starting from 2000 to 2006, and then from 2008 to the present day. Due to their vast knowledge of the system, EcoInteractive has been instrumental in keeping the system up to date. Next slide, please. All right, so as Julie mentioned earlier, all 7 members of DWQ's UST cleanup unit support the GeoTracker Help Desk. The Help Desk supports state and region water board staff, the local agencies, and the public, and not only addressing questions about the system, but also coordinates with these parties to determine programmatic needs for GeoTracker. Help Desk staff prioritizes these requests through a ticketing system and works with EcoInteractive to ensure the completion of the tasks. Some of these larger projects for GeoTracker will be covered in the next couple of slides. Next slide, please. All right, so all the projects shown on this slide are items that the GeoTracker Help Desk team is currently working on with Water Board program staff. Starting from the top, in response to the effort that the Waste Discharge Requirement program is currently undergoing to make GeoTracker their electronic file repository, we plan to update GeoTracker so it integrates WR facility information, which is provided in the Water Board's California Integrated Water Quality System, also known as SWRCB, with files uploaded in GeoTracker in order to establish tools and reports for program staff. Next, the Unified Program Agency, which encompasses the Certified Unified Program Agencies, or CUPAs, and their participating agencies. Tank Removal Portal is being developed in coordination with DWQ's Leak Prevention Group. The California Code of Regulations Chapter 16 rewrite that the Leak Prevention Group is currently working on requires the UPAs to submit tank removal information onto the GeoTracker database. For the site cleanup, sub-account program, and expedited claim account program, we are working with staff to determine how we can best incorporate the data from both the Water Board's State Cleanup Fund Improved Information System, also known as SCUFIS, along with GeoTracker database to improve the existing project management tools. And then finally, in an effort to support the Cal EPA's vapor intrusion work group's efforts to develop a California vapor intrusion database, GeoTracker will serve as the main data management system to collect and store vapor intrusion data for both the water boards and DTSC. Next slide, please. In addition to the items from the previous slide, the GeoTracker Help Desk is currently working with outside agencies to address a couple GeoTracker projects. Our unit is working with DTSC staff to better optimize GeoTracker and DTSC's EnviroStore database. Since Eco Interactive is the contracted programmer for both systems, this allows us to take features from EnviroStore and incorporate them into GeoTracker. The same can be done for DTSC. This is crucial for implementing some of our joint projects, such as vapor intrusion and sea level rise. As Julie mentioned earlier, our unit is currently working with Region Board and DTSC staff to determine cleanup sites that may be vulnerable to the effects of sea level rise. One goal of the sea level rise effort is to develop a viewing portal for the public to show both Waterboard and DTSC cleanup sites that they may be at risk based off of various metrics. This portal will have its own interactive map and customized legend. Now for the stall case initiative, Julie also mentioned that our unit works with US EPA and other state water board staff to assist with either our regional boards or our LOPs in closing difficult cases. Based on feedback from the stall case initiative team, GeoTracker will establish a prioritization tool to rank existing leaking underground storage tank cases based off selected metrics. The goal is to not only establish existing stall cases, but also highlight potential cases to be added. Next slide, please. So thank you again for the opportunity to cover our unit's tasks and responsibilities for not only the UST cleanup program, but also the GeoTracker database. We would like to now welcome any questions or comments from the board. Thank you.
Thank you as well. I appreciate you and the entire team's work here. I know, as is the case with most things underground, it can go unnoticed sometimes, the work that happens there, but it's so critical, the underground storage tank program here in the state, and appreciate the continued prioritization of problem cases, and congratulations on the acknowledgement of that great work there. As you know, we've all heard here, this is only a team of 7, but the work that you're all doing is so critical, and we're not over-resourced. And so the ability to be tackling such huge issues here all amongst you is really just noted, and appreciate that leadership. And when it comes to GeoTracker, you know, definitely not unlike the UST program, a quiet workhorse here at the State Water Resources Control Board continues to grow in its importance, and just appreciate the leadership to continue to think of how to ensure that that platform and resource continues to help make us all better decision makers amongst each other, because there is a ton of data in there. And, you know, on that, I know, and would maybe like to hear the thoughts around, you know, the challenges that sometimes come with the amount of PDFs that are ultimately uploaded into the system, knowing that, you know, any data in those PDFs are kind of locked away a bit and not as accessible as, you know, digitized information. So just, or machine readable available information in spreadsheets, et cetera. So just wondering if there's thought around how to continue to move the regulated community to be reporting, not just through PDF upload, but, you know, expansion of the data fields, basically, so that we get data that, you know, is a lot more actionable and not kind of maybe sometimes locked away in PDFs. Just wondering if you all have any thought about that and what the future might look like for GeoTracker.
Yeah, that's a great question, Chair Escobar. So GeoTracker actually actually accept what we call ESI data. So that is our electronic data that comes in through directly from the laboratories, and it is submitted into GeoTracker. We actually have 3 portals within GeoTracker. So there's the public portal, which everyone can see, and then we have the regulators portal, which is basically the background for all of our regulators. That's where they do the project management, the day-to-day analysis of things and looking at the data. We have a lot of features, and then we have our ESI portal is where the regulated public can actually upload that data, and that's in electronic format. So most of our so we have 3 programs that are required under regulation to have ESI submitted. That's the UST cleanup program, the site cleanup program, and land disposal programs. So those three programs have the most ESI data. Actually, UST cleanup has the most. And there has been issues with enforcement on that in the past, but we have been ramping that up a little bit on the regional board level. Actually, our boots on the ground, we like to call them, they've been really great about that. And so we do have a lot of that electronic data. The only problem we have really with the PDFs is those historical reports. So anything pre-2000. Well, it wasn't implemented, like it wasn't enforced until 2007, I believe. So anything pre-2007, we have an issue with. So we've talked about things like PDF scraping tools and things like that, but on the level we have the data, it would be really difficult and really costly to the state. So we are always exploring options to get that historical data, because some of that is going to be really key for our sea level rise project that we're doing.
That's great. Appreciate that. Looking to fellow board colleagues, Board Member Firestone.
Yeah, I'll just really just comments. There's a lot of priorities we have at the water board. And like you said, this is one that often goes unnoticed, and also a lot of times the electronic systems we have are not the sexy part of the work, but I do just want to emphasize how much, as we think about equity and the types of actions we have in our racial equity resolution, the types of, you mentioned the sea level rise study, and just trying to figure out how we're adapting and protecting our most vulnerable communities. If we don't have the information in a way that's accessible and we can manage it, it really undermines our ability to do any of that. And so I just want to recognize how important this is, and appreciate all of the work that's going on. I'm appreciative that we have time to sort of help make it a little more visible. But it is a real priority, and I appreciate the problem solving, even with the limitations that we have, and as we're updating our systems.
Here. Thank you, Board Member. Board Member McGuire.
Yes, thank you. I'll just echo and ditto the appreciation. I think I was surprised to hear that you hadn't been to the board with an update in 6 years or so. And I've been on the board almost 6 years. And so this, I guess, is my first update from the GeoTracker program. So I would love it if we could maybe have that a little more frequent and going forward. And I just bring that up because you're working on a lot of really interesting initiatives. And I think in particular, the climate change, groundwater rise vulnerability piece, I think is intriguing. And I'm really looking forward to hearing more about that as you develop that tool, but also to the point on equity initiatives and also the vapor intrusion project management tools. There's just a lot of important work that you're doing. So thank you for that on both the underground storage tank side, which I agree is, it's outside, out of mind a lot of times because you're doing such great work and you're moving that forward. So I appreciate that. Question for you, and it's one I asked during our briefing, was this system, the GeoTracker, has been around for a couple decades now. And what I hear a lot, I'm not an IT tech guy, so bear with me. But what I hear a lot is concern and needs to upgrade and revamp dramatically our databases and data management systems. We're doing it right now with water rights. I think some other programs are looking at it as well. It seemed like from you, I heard a little bit of a different response in the way you've been able to keep up with the evolution of IT needs and data needs over time. Could you just speak a little bit to that, knowing that you do have a contractor that you had under contract for a number of years now?
Yeah, thank you, Board Member McGuire. So the unique thing about GeoTracker is that we have, and other databases have this also, but we have a software as a service contract. Gamma has a similar contract. But the biggest unique part is that it's led by a team of technical staff at DWQ. And we all use GeoTracker on a daily basis. As program managers, we have to use it to look at data, to evaluate things, to help the regional boards as need be. So we understand the needs of our regulators and the regulated community. Also, that's from us working on the help desk on a daily basis. So I feel like we have really been able to keep up with technology because of our software as a service contract. So because that allows us to make real-time improvements on the system on a daily basis. So Stephen talked about our ticketing system. We use that to allow our regulators to put in tickets. We put in tickets. And then we work to prioritize. And a lot of times we get really good ideas from the public and good ideas from our regulators. And so we work as a team to develop those tickets to make it something that's easily usable, but that doesn't change the system so much that it's going to really drastically impact our end users. And so we take a lot of consideration into who is looking into GeoTracker, who's using GeoTracker. And essentially it's everyone uses it. I mean, it's utilized worldwide. We do have international partners who contact us. So so we have had that fortunate piece of being able to keep up with that technology because of the dedication of our technical team and our good work with Eco Interactive, and the software as a service contract is a really big thing. So
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, board member. Again, just much appreciation, and then echo board member McGuire's request here. Ultimately, feel free to come back more often, and especially as you're gearing up on these various priority projects for both GeoTracker, but also the underground storage tank program. You know, I know there's a recent incident, unfortunately in Ventura, around an underground storage tank. And so certainly, you know, elevated to mind for myself, the good ongoing work that goes on, even when there are here moments where there are water quality impacts or leaks that happen. Having an active program allows us to be responsive. And so just really appreciate the continued protection of communities in the work that you're doing. So much thanks, and look forward to whatever going to be further update. All right.
I would like to just shout out the leak prevention unit and regional water board in LA for that incident you're talking about. They did a really quick response. So thank you for that.
Thank you as well. Yeah, it was incredibly impressive, and the quick response time. And so just thanks to the team, and thanks to you all. Again, really appreciate this item. All right, that wraps up item number 3, and now brings us here, moving to the conclusion of our board meeting. Board member reports. Is there anyone like to kick us off on reports? And here, let me quickly bring up my own calendar. Vice Chair.
I can jump in. I just have one. I traveled to Bakersfield and joined board member McGuire on a tour of the Kern Basin, and we had a really good discussion. I think at this point, as Mr. Urosic reported earlier, they really appreciate spending time with us as board members, but probably even more so spending time with staff. And so had some good discussions, but the detailed discussions are, I think, what everyone recognizes being crucial going forward.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Vice Chair, and thank you for making sure that staff were present there. Like you said, I think that is one of the more important components here, is having that technical understanding across, so that we can winnow things down and then decide from our level what we need. So thank you. Quickly, on the 19th, I was on the Water Zone podcast here talking about decarbonization in the water sector, something that we don't often talk about too thoroughly here, but a lot of, obviously exciting opportunity with greenhouse gas reductions, continued need to look at operations and ways that, and I think of the organics rediversion that's happening from landfills to wastewater treatment plants is another example of ways that our water sector can and is contributing to conversations around climate change, not just adaptation, but here mitigation as well. So that was a nice opportunity. On the 24th last week, actually was down in East Arosi with the governor. The governor came down to East Arosi to sign a trio of legislative bills, one on allowing for administrators on the wastewater side, mirroring work that we're able to do on drinking water systems and East Arosi, and appreciate Board Member Firestone's leadership in continuing to keep track of and keep on track a lot of important work happening in the community there. It was great to have the governor in the community celebrating here the passage of that bill, a couple of others to do with technical, managerial, and financial capacity for small systems, and then one around domestic wells and renters and the ensuring that they have access to programs that the state board and regional water quality control boards are overseeing around water quality testing and replacement water, knowing that for some renters, they had property managers or property owners rather that weren't allowing access to those programs. So really great to be able to be out in East Arosi and with the governor there. And then on the 26th, I'm a member of the Public Policy Institute of California's Water Center Advisory Council. And so we had our advisory council meeting in San Francisco. It was good to connect with colleagues that are also on the advisory council there throughout the state. Metropolitan is represented. I know agriculture is represented by Dave Puglia. And so it was nice to connect with colleagues. A lot going on, certainly, and a lot to be able to help to inform the good work that the PPIC does in the space. And then yesterday was out in Monterey County in the communities of San Lucas and San Gerardo. And I really appreciate California Rural Legal Assistance and Community Water Center pulling together a tour of those two communities. Myself, Administrator Martha Guzman, Regional Administrator Martha Guzman, Senator Laird, some local electeds were all part of discussions around the needs of the community of San Lucas on here. They have nitrate contamination. There's a responsible party. They also have iron and manganese challenges. And like so many of the communities we're working with, just a historic lack of investment in their water systems. And so it was a good opportunity to talk about where we are in their process. There's a number of paths that the community is currently weighing, and just really appreciate the work that's gone on to respond to the community's needs, the local leadership, and importantly, our folks here in the program as well. It was a good trip, a good opportunity to connect. And then I also heard concerns around continued nitrate contamination in the region. There was obviously talk of the local ag order, our remand. Good to be able to connect across on those policy issues as well, knowing that we're in the middle of our ag panel and evaluating where the state and regional boards currently are with their irrigated lands regulatory programs and some of our approaches to the continued nitrate challenges out there. So it was a good, honest discussion. Frustration certainly with the state board, I feel, but glad to be able to hear those frustrations and try to connect folks to policy vision I feel that the board is shaping here around it. So those are my updates. And Board Member McGuire.
Great. Yeah, I'll keep a couple of themes going here. One is the nitrate contamination and ways to address that. And the other is trips to Bakersfield. So I had the privilege of making 2 trips to Bakersfield last week. So I had a lot of car time on I-5 and 99, and it did mix it up a little bit just for my own sanity. But it was good. It was well worth it, and I'll tell you why. So on Friday, the 27th, it was the tour of the Kern Basin that you heard about already. And on the 24th, I went to a ribbon cutting for the Rio Bravo Greeley Unified School District, which is a few miles east, maybe 20 minutes or so, west of Bakersfield. And it's in the middle of a more agriculturally dominated area. And it's a middle school and an elementary school. And they have 123 TCP contamination. They have nitrate contamination in their well. And so they've been unable to use their well for a number of years. In fact, they've been on bottled water for quite a long time from, I believe, the state board. And the solution ended up being you looked at all the normal things we talk about in the needs assessment and others, and looking at opportunities to consolidate. But that ended up not being really viable here because they're so far out, several miles out from the nearest system. So in this case, it was treatment that made the most sense. So they received a grant and some investment from Department of Water Resources, actually under Prop 50 funding, which has been around for a while. And UC Davis led the initiative to evaluate this, and I think a couple of other sites, but this one was the ribbon cutting and ended up being able to fund a permanent solution there for treatment. So not only did I get to go there and see sort of funds in action from another agency, but we at the Water Board are also funding the first 3 years of operations and maintenance for that district as well. So I think that really just shows the partnerships that are possible here. And just two last thoughts, and one is it's great to see the kids and the excitement and interest in water. And they were very friendly. The band was out there playing, and so this was a big deal to them to be able to have this facility and not have to rely anymore on bottled water. And the other is was really the highlight for me, which was the facilities director there for the school district stepped up and decided to become a water treatment operator and get his certification. And he's in the process. I think he's working on the grade 3 and working under a certified operator. And so going through that learning experience right now, but just to see that willingness and dedication, we need more operators out there, especially in these areas. So it was just really exciting to see that.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for going down there. The drive can be a bit, but there's no easy way to get down other than driving. So a lot of good car time, meditative time. Yeah. Board Firestone.
Great. I also went on a tour in and around Bakersfield with the GSA or multiple GSAs in Kern, and that was really helpful. And I was down in East Rosie on Friday, and we were building on, I think, the really great momentum that the governor helped build by coming down to the community itself. That community has been without safe drinking water for probably at least 2 decades. And about a year ago, we met and pulled everyone together, and the board, expedited the drinking water funding program, and everyone was really focused on how can we expedite getting safe drinking water. And over the course of the year, things slipped, particularly at the local level, in terms of getting things in the timely manner to be able to make that timeline that we had talked to the community about. And so Friday was a really great meeting for everyone locally and the state to look at how we can make up time and kind of get back to that timeline that we had talked about with the community of safe water in 2026. And so I'm optimistic that we can do that. There's a lot of with any of these projects, getting it over the finish line takes everyone collaborating and treating things with the urgency that they need. And so there's a lot of kind of immediate follow-up actions just in the next 2 weeks to get that on track, but I'm really hopeful that we can do that. And, I think it was really helpful to have the momentum that the governor showed, and going all the way down there, it's a long way. And I think it gave a lot of hope to folks that have kind of run out of it after 2 decades. And then I guess I have a question. That's my board member report, and I have a question related to everyone's reports as part of the next agenda item.
Thank you so much, board member. And thank you again. It makes a huge difference having your presence and leadership there to help keep folks on track at the local level. So much appreciated. Okay, that wraps up board member reports and brings us to the executive director's report. Mr. Oppenheimer, anything you'd like to highlight and what is always a very helpful and useful compendium of all that is going on at the water boards?
Yeah, good morning. There were a few things that I think are worth briefly highlighting that were included. The first is just Division of Water Quality had a nice, I thought, succinct summary and update on the wastewater needs assessment and the work that's ongoing there. Division of Water Quality or Division of Water Rights had an entry on the Merced River and a web link to an interactive map that they've posted for the lower Merced River that includes statements of riparian and pre-14 use as part of our ongoing efforts to assess conditions on the Merced River, which is something new that was posted last month. And then the last thing I just wanted to touch on was an update that Division of Drinking Water included on the PFAS sampling associated with community water centers serving disadvantaged communities. And I just bring it up because I think for the first time, at least I don't recall seeing it in previous reports, but there was some metrics included on sort of and a snapshot on where we are on the status of various actions tied to that effort. So those are just three things I thought worth mentioning. That's all I have though. And it sounds like Board Member Firestone may have a question.
Really appreciate you highlighting those issues and definitely interested in, and we'll have to dig into where we are on the PFAS testing. I know it's a very unique and needed thing that we're doing there and can really help inform as we kind of make our way to an MCL, the scale and scope of the challenge we're talking about there. So thank you. Board Member Firestone.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks for highlighting all of those things. And there is so much good stuff in here. So I think really it was maybe a request, and I know we don't have Chief Deputy Mogus here for this question, but is just given, we all, I think, have been talking about nitrate contamination and the follow-up on the order that we said and the ag expert panel, if we can just get an update on the timeline for that, because I think it's now later than what we had originally hoped for. So it'd be great to get that information and the next update. And I know people are working on it. So
there's definitely a plan to have an update on that. I'm not sure if it's in a forthcoming report. I believe the next one, I'm just not positive without Ms. Mogus here, but yeah. We'll follow up.
Great. Okay. And that's on the irrigated lands program. And then I just thought I'd also pull out related to, since I know this is top of mind for everyone, in the irrigated lands update in this, the Central Coast reported on their efforts. And just even Board Member McGuire, the school that we're funding that has nitrate in 123 TCP, we're doing everything we can to get resources to get people safe drinking water, but we also need to make sure that we're working with. I know we're doing this, but working urgently with the regions, the management zones, and the GSAs to be able to get them information on projects and have them help support some of those costs, because as we know, we don't have as much funding as we need for all of the failing systems and impacted domestic wells that are needing funding right now. And so I think really trying to build those partnerships. And they mentioned in their pulling together stakeholders and their efforts to try to develop their replacement water program as part of the follow-up from our order. And I think, I'd really like to make sure that we're helping to support getting those programs in place as quickly as possible and in coordination with all of our safer efforts and, across regional boards, state boards, GSA, management zones. It's always extra degree of difficulty, but appreciate that folks are focused on that and working on it. But just wanted to pull that out.
Thank you for that, board member, and agree. I know part of our discussion yesterday in San Gerardo was around the Regional Water Quality Control Board's replacement drinking water program, and folks really wanting to understand the timeline for that at the local level. And I agree that there's ways I feel that we can help expedite those timelines by providing some support, especially, given the good work that's already gone on in the Central Valley Regional Water Quality Control Board. There's, models and things that I think folks like the Central Coast Regional Board can maybe try to move faster on than not. So thank you for those. Completely agree. Anything else from board members on the executive report? All right, hearing none. That concludes our executive director's report agenda item and brings us to the end of our board meeting. We will not have closed session. Next board meeting will be October 16th. It'll take place on Wednesday. We will not be meeting on Tuesday. Make sure to flag for folks.
I believe we are.
Are we having a closed session?
Closed session
Okay,
on
sorry.
the 2 administrative hearing office.
Okay, we are then having a
items.
closed session. Apologize. I didn't see an email indicating that we were going to be having closed session. So,
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you had
Yeah.
received that from the presiding hearing officer. Yes, we will have closed session on the 2 administrative hearing office.
okay, then we will have closed session, and apologize for that. And so we'll go ahead and we will not adjourn currently. We will go to closed session after maybe a 15-minute break. So we'll reconvene at closed session at 11:25. And our location will be,
Room 2510.
okay, we'll be in 2510. All right, well, thank you everyone again for the one-day board meeting here. We'll close out officially after closed session until we see everyone here then in 2 weeks on October 16th. Be safe, be well. Thanks all.